Let's move on to the first question. This is for both of you. The long shadow over this race is Judge Nelson Wolff, who first took the office of Bexar County Judge in May 2001. May 2001, Judge Wolff was appointed to this position 4 months before 9/11 and 6 years before the invention of the Apple iPhone. Much has been said about Judge Wolff's legacy so far in this race, but today we're talking about what the new era could and should look like. Bexar County hasn't seen fresh leadership in 21 years, and I want to ask you both honestly, what changes do you think are overdue for the county? As Bexar County Judge, will your tenure look like the outgoing Judge Wolff's, or will it look different? Tell us about what changes you plan to make. Commissioner DeBerry, please take that one first.
Yeah, so I think I stand before you today, and not just a small business owner, but I stand here before you today as a mother, a single mother who's raised 2 children, a 17-year-old who's in high school, who's super excited about where she's going to college, and a 20-year-old who's at the University of Texas, who, by the way, is headed to the Texas-Oklahoma game this weekend. I want my children to be able to come back here and find good paying jobs and fulfillment and satisfaction associated with those jobs. And so yes, when I talk about being a change agent, there are some things that I am going to be like-minded regarding Nelson Wolff. But there are some things that I'm going to be very different. When I talk about cronyism, when I talk about the good old boy system at the Bexar County Courthouse and who's bought and paid for, yeah, I'm going to buck the system where that's concerned. And we're going to offer transparency in county government. We're going to offer accountability in county government. And I think that's what I stood for as a county commissioner and why I decided that I was going to run for this seat. Because I think the citizens of Bexar County and San Antonio need to know what goes on in the shadows and the dark regarding county government. 45-second videos after every commissioner's court meeting that I held to tell people what was going on at commissioner's court. We're going to continue to do that, but we're also going to have a vision regarding moving this community forward for the next 20 years. What does that look like? Perhaps pulling people out of poverty on the near west side with the possibility of moving a Bexar County jail, merging Metro Health with UHS, and having a seat on the board of CPS Energy and San Antonio Water System so that the county has a seat at the table. Because if we don't, you all got bills and you got $31 rebates. Folks, that's not enough considering Snowmageddon. It's not. But we don't have a seat at the table. And if we don't, and we don't advocate for that, it is taxation without representation. That is the kind of leadership that I will bring. That is the kind of outside the box, and that is the kind of buck the system thinking that I will bring. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Sakai, you have 2 minutes to answer to the same question. How would your tenure differ from Judge Wolff's?
Sure. Well, let me recognize Judge Wolff for the visionary leader that he's been done for the 20 years. He's created some really legacy projects, the mission trails along the San Antonio River, the San Pedro Creek there on the near west side, and the Tobin Center, which is a great, great event center. And I am committed to finish those legacy projects that Judge Wolff and the current Commissioner's Court have committed to. But Judge Sakai does have a different vision and wants to go on a different path. I call it the BEXAR, B-E-X-A-R, necessities. I truly believe we need to get back to basics. I believe that in this post-COVID environment, in the post-COVID economy, we're going to have to kind of tighten our belt, so to speak. So what I want to focus in is what my passion is, and that's to focus in on the most important infrastructure of our community, and that's the children and families. Let me give you some examples of what I believe in my vision for Bexar County and the Judge Sakai Commissioner's Court. I want to focus in on affordable housing, the capacity of affordable housing, because I see that the Haven for Hope is at full capacity with children and families, and basically the working poor. We're going to have to develop that capacity by public-private partnerships to increase capacity. We also have to focus in on small business. Yes, we want corporate headquarters and we want to give the tax incentives to make sure that we get the next Toyota, but let's not forget the small businesses in our community that are really the backbone of Bexar. Let's focus in on the digital divide, the high-speed internet that we have to make sure. We saw that in the freeze that seniors they died because of the lack of access. We had students disconnected. And so finally, I want to focus in on public health. With the new public health entity that the current Commissioner's Court is committed to, I want to focus on wellness, nutrition, the elimination of food deserts. I want to focus in on those diseases, obesity and diabetes, that plague our community. The healthier we make our community, the more healthier, resilient, and stronger we're going to make our community. And that's my pledge to you as your next county judge.
Thank you both. Now, bear with me. I want to ask about the county budget. Don't tune out, guys, because this is really important and also interesting. The county's two most recent budgets were bigger than they've ever been by half due to historic federal investments through the American Rescue Plan, or ARPA funding, and the infrastructure bill. The county's most recent proposed budget has a top-line number of $2.86 billion, and the previous year's adopted budget was almost $2.8 billion, a 58% increase from the year before. Now, those federal funds are one-time cash infusions, and an important thing to note is that most or all of that money will have already been appropriated by the time either of you takes office. In our exit interview with Judge Wolf yesterday, he said that some of that money has been placed in buckets, but that the next county judge will have to decide within those buckets where that money goes. Judge Sakai, you have said in a previous forum that whoever takes over this position may need to get creative to actually execute that historic spending. What do you mean by get creative?
What creative is, I have to learn to listen to you, the voters. I have to listen to the neighborhood associates. I got to listen to all the people who do business with the county. I want to make it real clear, government can't fix everything. What I've committed to, and I state on the record, is that we got to create public-private partnerships. That's what I did in children's court. That family drug court, early childhood court, that college-bound docket were all public-private partnerships, bringing in the nonprofit community, the faith-based community, our churches, our neighborhood associations. What the key as county judge is listening to the people and then determining what those problems are and then bringing the experts and stakeholders together to come up with the solutions, Lee. So what I mean by creative is the ability to listen, the ability to assess the facts between parties that will be at odds with each other. It's no different what I did in the court system, hearing two sides of a case, especially in family law. And then making a decision that gave dignity and respect. That was the main thing I learned from as a judge, and I think is key as the next county judge. You have to be able to listen, give dignity to respect to everybody, and make sure that you provide a level playing field. That's what our community is insisting. That's what our community demands. They just want people to quit arguing over the either political debates or the accusations. They want people to figure out what the problems are and come up with solutions. And that's the reason why it's got to be creative. It's got to be innovative. It's got to be out of the box, because we have complex problems, especially with those issues that I already addressed: housing, small business, public internet, public health, really complex issues that we're going to have to do to put families back together to make a healthier community.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Commissioner DeBerry, I want to ask you about the budget as well. I'm going to frame it a little bit differently for you. You were a member of Judge Wolf's Commissioner's Court, and you publicly disagreed with some of the decisions that were made on how to spend the money. Do you feel comfortable executing Judge Wolf's outgoing appropriations? How will you approach getting down to work on that?
So I was blessed and privileged to be a part of Commissioner's Court, where we looked at a historic amount of money that came into that court regarding ARPA money. And so as we worked together, the lone Republican on the court, I did have to reach across the aisle with a couple of other Democrats to get the kind of votes that I needed that were in place. And one of those issues was, look, I came into office regarding property taxes and lowering those property taxes and appraisal reform and making sure that we are not taxing people out of their homes. And so I led that charge at the court. And by the way, I cultivated 2 other Democratic votes to be able to get that done, because we had a historic amount of funding associated with it. Also made sure that I cultivated 2 other votes, like I said before, to establish a family leave policy so that people could take paid time off to be able to have children or adopt children. Made sure that we had a body camera turnaround policy in 10 days. Also made sure we appropriated a historic amount of money regarding domestic violence, led that effort. Cultivated votes regarding that. Across the aisle, hiring more prosecutors and investigators in the DA's office so that women and children were not living in fear. And then lastly, one of my proudest moments on that court, and cultivated 2 votes, was restoring the elder fraud unit to the DA's office that had been vacant for 5 years. This is the kind of leadership, ladies and gentlemen, that I'm talking about. I don't just sit back and accept the status quo. I make sure that we're digging in, that we look at the problems that we have here, whether it's poverty, whether it's healthcare, whether it's property taxes, whether it's an elder care unit in the DA's office, because by the way, my 95-year-old father, who scammed every single day, doesn't have time to wait on restitution nor prosecution. And so that is the kind of leader that I want to be. We can listen all day long, but at the end of the day, it is about listening and cultivating listening, but it's also about leadership.
Thank you. Thank you. Please, crowd, try to keep it down a little bit as we go through these questions, because there's a lot we want to get to. So a quick follow-up for you both. Since these federal cash infusions were one-time investments, if you are elected Bexar County judge, will the budget moving forward look more like the $1.8 billion the county spent in 2020, 2021, and the years preceding it, or the $2.8 billion, $2.9 billion of the past two budget cycles? In other words, can you commit today to bringing the budget back down to earth?
Yes, I
Judge.
can commit to that, Lee.
Thank you. Commissioner DeBerry?
So I think, look, we've got to look at, like, what does that budget look like regarding, and I'm a fiscal conservative all day long. My mother used to tell me, if you take care of the dollars, who was a single mother who worked in civil service at Fort Sam Houston, and the daughter of an Air Force career veteran. By the way, shout out to those veterans who are out here today. Thank you for your service. But I was not raised in a wealthy environment. It was hard work. My mother was about grit and grace, and it's about what do we look at. And so there's a lot of fat. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, when I've sat on this court and looked at a $2.8 billion budget, there is fat in that budget, and there are ways to be able to make cuts. And so I can't necessarily tell you that, yes, we're going to stick to the budget that we have today, or I can, because of cuts that we're going to make in the budget. But let's be realistic about this. It's very easy to just say yes on a question or no on a question. It's another thing to think about vision and leadership and how we're moving this community forward. And by the way, in 2050, we're going to have 6 million people in this county. So the resources are going to be taxed, and so we're going to have to make difficult decisions. You need a small business person and a pragmatic leader to get that done.
That's your time. Judge Sakai, you had a full minute to answer that. I appreciated the brevity as a journalist, but if you'd like to take your minute, you can have it now.
That's just the way I am. I just cut to the chase. Lee, one thing I want to bring out is Commissioner DeBerry is correct. She, as county commissioner before she stepped down less than 1 year in her term, she basically pushed for a tax cut. That tax cut saved the average homeowner $5, which at one time was the price of a gallon of gas. But in that $5 savings for each homeowner, it reduced the budget by $1.7 million. And I realized that's a lot of money. That is. But in that $1.7 million, I, as the local administrative judge and the administrative judge of Children's Court, asked for a family violence court, and it was cut. And I was sorely disappointed, and I understand her commitment to the resources and public safety. But I truly believe that that court was necessary, and I argued for it, and I didn't get it. But that is the way the budget works. And so I understand that, and that's the reason why I want to step up to be your next county judge to truly protect the public safety and public health of our community.
Thank you. Commissioner DeBerry, he name-checked you, so I'll give you a minute as well to respond.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't see Judge Sakai in that court when we were having this discussion. I led the conversation regarding the DA's office and more prosecutors and investigators at the battered women's shelter and at the courts. I was in meetings over Christmas to make sure that we got that done. And so for him to stand here and say that he was a part of the solution, he hasn't been. He can say, oh, I established the Collaborative Commission on Domestic Violence. It's not enough from a bureaucracy standpoint to say, I created a commission. He's been roundly criticized, as has the Collaborative Commission on Domestic Violence, for no metrics and no data associated with moving the needle on domestic violence. And by the way, I'm going to reiterate, we still have the highest rate of domestic violence in Bexar County in the entire state. So there's more to do. It's not about just creating bureaucracy and a commission. It's about digging in and appropriating money that you think is important. And by the way, if we got rid of the $13 to $15 million at the jail, we could solve that budget solution. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I don't want to spend a ton more time here, but I do want to go back to you, Judge Sakai, for one more minute on this exchange, and then we'll move to the next question. Go ahead. One more minute to respond to what Commissioner DeBerry just said about your record and domestic violence.
I think my record speaks for itself. I believe this community has full faith and confidence that I served for 16 years. In the last three, it was 4 terms of office. The last 3 terms of office, I was unopposed. I think that speaks volume to my character, my integrity, my reputation. And so I understand my integrity and character and reputation has been put at challenge in this particular race. And I find the personal attacks offensive. But nonetheless, we argued for basically a family violence court through my staff. And I had conversations with all the Commissioners Court staff. And I understand, government can't be all things for everything. And so I understood that the district attorney's office had their list, the sheriff had his list, and so I understand those are the tough decisions because county government must be small enough also to live within its budget. And as county judge, I'm going to make sure that we live within our budget.
Thank you. Let's move to dig in a little deeper on domestic violence. This is a full question, so 2 minutes on this one, and give me a little second to give some background. Last December, county commissioners allocated $3.3 million in federal funding to reduce the backlog of domestic violence cases in the court system and improve resources in other parts of Bexar County. Commissioner DeBerry, you said in a forum recently that you would have liked to see even more money dedicated to this issue. Judge Sakai, you used a special order to create a collaborative commission on domestic violence in August 2019, which is now several years into a 5-year strategic plan to lower the incidence rate. Domestic violence has been a consistent problem in Bexar County, as you both have identified, and has increased in recent years. And if there's anything we know about domestic violence, it's that any statistics we have are likely an undercount. You both have been leaders on this issue, so my question to you both is this. How does Bexar County start to move the needle on domestic violence? Let's start with Judge Sakai.
Well, it's to continue what we're doing. One of the things, the strategies is, one, this is how I learned to move the needle, so to speak. We all as stakeholders in the system must learn to communicate, we must learn to collaborate, and then we got to coordinate. And then we have to execute. We have to understand, I think business owners understand that. It's a matter of the process and figuring out how we all work together for the common goal and to develop the strategies. The domestic violence system is the district attorney's office who prosecutes, the courts who hear the cases, the law enforcement that enforce, and the nonprofit community that comes together to provide the support services. What holds those legs of the stool, so to speak, is going to be Commissioner's Court with the funding. That's the reason why this collaborative commission is so important. Yes, perhaps we haven't moved the needle as much as we want, but we have set up a stool with strong legs, with pegs, the Commissioner's Court, that will provide the funding to come up with the creative, innovative, out-of-box solutions that we need to deal with domestic violence. That is one of the underpinnings of our community. That is one of the things I will stay focused on as your next county judge. Domestic violence, mental health services, drug and alcohol rehabilitation are all issues that we need to focus in, and I have a commitment to stay focused on those problems and issues.
Thank you. Commissioner DeBerry, what is your plan to move the needle on domestic violence?
So first and foremost, this is a passion project for me regarding domestic violence. I grew up in a home that was rather toxic and probably saw things that I shouldn't see, and so I understand this issue probably better than most. It's very near and dear to my heart. But, all due respect, Peter, the Collaborative Commission on Domestic Violence, and like I said, there's been criticism associated with it. It's been there 2 to 3 years, but there are no data, there's no metrics regarding how we move, how we pivot, how we innovate, how we adjust. And if you don't have data or metrics associated with something, if it's what I've learned, obviously, as a small business owner, it's all for naught. It's a show. And so what I did as a county commissioner, and it's one of my proudest moments on the court, to be able to talk to the DA, to be able to talk to Judge Alvarez, Judge Monique Diaz, and figure out, as well as Marta Palais at the Battered Women's Shelter, to figure out what we can do. Because the backlog of 5,200 cases, which, by the way, I led the effort to make sure we didn't just have the domestic violence courts, they were hearing those cases, all the courts were going to hear those cases. I led the resolution on that. I also led an appropriation of a historic amount of money, again, on the court of $300 million. And you're absolutely right, Lee, I wanted to do more, because the Battered Women's Shelter did not get what they needed to get. I also made sure that we had county constables and appropriated money to make sure they beefed up the constables so they could serve temporary protective orders and temporary restraining orders. Because guess what, folks? Women and children do not need to be living in fear. The sheriff had gutted his civil division, and there were stacks of temporary protective orders and temporary restraining orders all over the place. My proudest day during the primary was when somebody from Child Protective Services came up to me and said, "You're the commissioner who made sure we had more constables serving TPOs and TROs." And he said, "I've been a Democrat all my life, but I'm voting for a Republican for the first time." Thank you.
Thank you. We've been back and forth on that a couple times, and right now you're at even time by my count, so let's move on to the next question, if that's all right. You both have long been advocates for improving conditions at the Bexar County Jail. The problems with the jail have been well documented and long-standing, so I won't get into them all here. Instead, I'd like to hear from you, what specific plans do you have to improve conditions at Bexar County Jail for staff and also for inmates? We're going to go to Commissioner DeBerry first on this one.
So I was really proud to lead the effort regarding a jail consultant regarding Commissioner's Court, which, by the way, we vetted and had a process associated with it, so we got the best person for the job to come in and take a look. Because what you do as a small business owner, what do? You benchmark against other places and other businesses that are doing things better. And so, as somebody who came into Commissioner's Court, and by the way, when I came in, you're right, Lee, it's been well documented, the problems that we have at the jail. Infrastructure problems, security problems. In fact, as early as 2 weeks ago, there was a female detention guard who'd had to call the police department and file a police report to get relieved of her shift so she could go pick up her children. That culture is not acceptable. And so really, what I did on the court and tried in holding the sheriff accountable regarding not just $13 to $15 million in overtime, but also improving morale and culture at that jail. I was proud to have the Deputy Sheriff's Association endorsement during the primary, because they knew I was standing up for them. They knew I was standing up for no more mandatory triple and double overtime shifts. And by the way, leaving your job bleary-eyed and wrapping your cars around telephone poles because you can't see to drive home. That's not the kind of culture that we have to accept. And so yes, I challenge the sheriff on not just $13 to $15 million in overtime every year, which, by the way, all of you as taxpayers are paying for. How do we reduce that? How do we improve recruitment? How do we get to a place where we're not just paying overtime, but we're improving morale for the men and women that put their lives on the front line every single day? So, you're welcome, sir. So, I know it was a tough thing for a tough stance for me to have to make, but I felt like it was important because you stand up for the right thing and you challenge authority sometimes when you feel like people are being downtrodden.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Judge Sakai, it's your turn to talk about the Bexar County Jail. What specific plans do you have to improve conditions for staff and also for inmates?
Again, it's a matter of looking at the process. And one of the issues, and this is where I'll be in agreement, it's about focusing on the employees, the deputies and the people who work at the jail. It's a matter of compensation. And I want to make sure that I go on record to say that not only is it the deputies and the people working at the jail, it's really the county employees overall and their compensation. And I'm committed to look at the compensation in regards to the other counties, especially. I know for a fact, the studies have pointed out that the comparative salaries at the Bexar County Jail are below the other major metropolitan counties. So I'm committed to increase the compensation. I know that that's been an issue with the budget office, and that's an issue I'm going to have to take on as the next county judge. I also want to acknowledge the working conditions and the mandatory overtime. What we need to do is fill those positions. And again, it is about the morale. It's about making the place a safer place for employees. But it's not going to be by pointing the finger at the sheriff and getting in an argument over the boat. What it's going to be about is working together with the district attorney's office who file charges and put people in jail, with the judges who hear cases and pull people out. It's also about working with the central magistrate and the system to divert people who do not belong in that jail. The mentally ill, the indigent, the low-level offenders, we need to divert them away from the jail so that we can basically protect. I've heard it clearly. We've got public safety is an issue that we need to focus on, and we got to keep the violent criminals, and we got to keep the sex offenders and the people who are a threat to our community, they got to be locked up. Everybody else, especially the indigents and the mentally ill, we need to divert them. And so that's my commitment to the jail, to work with the DA, to work with the courts, to work with the jail, sheriff, and make our jail a safe place and a safer community. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, hang on. Lee, I want a chance, since there was a comment that was made, I want a chance to be able to rebut that.
I don't think he name-checked you in that one. I don't know if I missed it, but I don't think he did. So let's move to the next question, because we are going to run out of time. Yeah, sorry about that. Well, what I wanted to ask is that commissioners plan to spend $60 million in pandemic relief money to form a county health division. For years, the county had an interlocal agreement in place with the San Antonio Metropolitan Health District, but it was allowed to expire this year. Do you think the county needs its own public health agency? Why or why not? And let's go first to you, Commissioner DeBerry.
So I was an advocate. I wrote an op-ed in the newspaper that was very well received about, look, this is about city-county consolidation and how we can really scale impact, not only for efficiency for taxpayers, but how we can scale impact regarding morbid obesity, diabetes, heart disease. We saw what happened during COVID, right? It attacked those ailments, most importantly for families that had those sorts of conditions. So when you looked at Metro Health, and you looked at the fact that they've been severely underfunded over the years, in fact, probably the first place that the city went to cut. And then you look at UHS, University Health System with the county, that has a $2.8 billion budget, whereas the city's got a $20 million budget. There's an opportunity to scale impact. And not just for the taxpayer regarding city-county consolidation, but really begin to move the needle in a way that we have never seen before, not just with Metro Health, but with UHS, who, by the way, stood up a vaccination site almost overnight during COVID. And then you bring in UT Health, and then you have students that are at the school that want a robust public health curriculum. There is huge opportunity associated with that. Does it take a little while to be able to get there? And by the way, this wasn't about the city giving up control. This was about the city having a couple of seats on the board of the University Health System to weigh into those decisions. But ladies and gentlemen, as I talk to vascular surgeons across this county, we are still cutting off the limbs of people in far too great a number. Because we have food deserts that exist, we don't have education efforts, we don't have probably the number of vascular surgeons that we need to here to be able to really make an impact here. And so, yes, I advocated all day long for the big idea, and I will continue to be able to do that because I'm not about duplication of services. And my feeling was if we got one domino to fall regarding public health, which, by the way, will continue under a Trish DeBerry for judge administration, be a priority with us. Where else can we consolidate? Animal care services, parks, what does that look like? I'm not just here to talk the talk. I'm here to walk the walk.
Thank you very much. Judge Sakai, do you think the county needs its own public health agency, and why or why not?
Yes, I'm committed to take that initiative that Judge Wolf and the current Commissioners Court have committed to, and that's create a new public health entity. A lot of people don't recognize, they say, well, you know, why the city, San Antonio and Bexar County can come together. Consolidation has always been discussed, it just hasn't worked. The latest endeavor on that issue was our child welfare system and the privatization of child welfare, and the attempt to consolidate that with the state and the county and the local community, and that failed. And so we got to be very careful when we say, let's just put everything together. One, people need to recognize that Bexar County has to cover the unincorporated areas and the suburban cities. And so that's what really happens in a city county, and that's what happened in the COVID with the Metropolitan Health. The county was quick with University Hospital System to pivot on vaccinations. They're the ones that set up at Wonderland Mall and really performed. They created the triage medical unit over at the Freeman, and the county really pivoted. That was an example of how good county government, and I want to give a shout out to our county employees, especially the Office of Emergency Management, who I have discussed with, because we need to be prepared for the next pandemic. We need to be ready for the next disaster, whether it be drought or famine or freeze. And so my commitment is to make sure that the public health entity doesn't duplicate services. That's a given. And what I want to do is be able to discuss this issue with the city manager, the city, and the mayor and the city council, and find that we can provide better services working together. That's what people want. Get government to work. Get both sides to come and figure out what we have to do to make a better and safer community. And that's my pledge to you as your next county judge.
Thank you very much. This actually segues really well. I wanted to ask both of you, in Judge Nelson Wolf's most recent term, the COVID-19 pandemic became an all-encompassing crisis that in many ways brought the county to a halt with no warning. One ironclad rule of leadership is that you never know what the next crisis will be until it's upon you. So I wanted to ask you both, what qualities do you bring to the role of Bexar County Judge that will prepare you for the next crisis, whatever it is? Let's go to Commissioner DeBerry first.
So this is a very comfortable question and a very comfortable space for me because I have built my reputation really in my business and my professional career on crisis communications. And so when we talk about the Office of Emergency Management, I was quick, very quick, obviously to criticize what happened during Snowmageddon when we had zero communication, as we had no water and we had no electricity, and I was exactly one of those people. I lost water first, and I thought, well, we'll be okay because I have electricity, but then we lost power probably about 10 hours later. Not to mention the fact my mother, who was in an assisted living facility, lost power too. Fell down, broke her shoulder, and had to crawl out into the hallway and hope somebody found her. So one of the things that I want to be able to do from a crisis communication standpoint is we've got to be able to connect the grid regarding assisted living facilities and the elderly to the hospital system so they don't lose power. But from a crisis standpoint, what do? You look at strategy and what does that look like? And you bring everybody to the table regarding different areas of expertise, and that is exactly what we did not do during the pandemic. The military is a great resource here. The private sector is a great resource here. Not to mention the fact, obviously, the Office of Emergency Management, SAPD, the San Antonio Fire Department, the Bexar County Constables, and who we have here. But my feeling was we didn't have that kind of strategy during the big freeze. And I had conversations with the Office of Emergency Management. Most importantly, we have to communicate with people. My goodness, we can't sit behind dark screens and try to tell people it's going to be okay. You got to be down there. You've got to be in it. You've got to be talking to people. You've got to be coordinating. You've got to have leadership associated with what does that strategy look like. And so from a strategic initiative standpoint, there's nobody who's more comfortable in that space than myself and somebody who's led crisis communications in this community for probably 25 years.
Appreciate it. I like this question a lot, and so I want to hear Judge Sakai. What qualities do you bring to the Bexar County Judge role?
Well, this question, I think, really goes to the heart of what leadership's all about. It's not about talking. It's about making decisions, and tough decisions. You know, as a judge, I heard hundreds of thousands of cases dealing with some of the toughest cases involving families that had life and death consequences in each of those cases. And I had to make the call. Made the call after there was factual disputes, had to make the best call in the best interest of children. No different than what I'll have to do as your next county judge. Now, I've had this discussion with the business community. They're very concerned about, and I will tell you, COVID was a once-in-a-lifetime circumstance. I believe with the vaccinations and all the proactive efforts that we're making, hopefully we won't ever return to where we were, where the hospitals were filling up. We had to bring refrigerated trucks in to take care of the dead bodies. tough decisions. And that's where we had to put mandates. And I supported Judge Wolf in that. And he got roundly criticized for that. But I think it was the right time at the right place because that was a tough decision he made. He made it, and that's what you're going to get with me as your next county judge. We may not agree. You may say, Judge, you're wrong. And I understand it, but I will promise to always listen to you. I promise to always respect you. I promise to always say, you know what, that's a good point. And so I am going to be very, very cautious about any type of mandates. I pray to God that we don't have that circumstance again where we get the dead bodies stacking up. But if I have to make that tough decision, then I will. And that's what leadership's all about.
Thank you. Now, we're getting close on time, so we're going to go to a 1-minute response on this next question. In places like El Paso, the county has set up their own version of the City of San Antonio's Migrant Resource Center to help with overflow from the City of El Paso's Resource Center. Should Bexar County consider also opening a shelter to help with the influx of asylum-seeking migrants coming over the southern border? Since the city has prioritized stepping up to help address this issue, should the county do the same? 1 minute, Commissioner DeBerry.
I thought it was him first.
Oh, sorry, Judge Sakai. Go ahead. I've been trying to keep track, but
Right.
it's hard.
The answer is yes, I support the city of San Antonio. I realize that's a hot button issue. We've got immigration issues, and that is a national issue. But what we need to recognize is that we've got people coming across that are seeking legal asylum to escape, to create a better life for their families. I'm very sensitive because my grandparents did the same thing as Japanese Americans coming across from Japan and establishing their lives here in Japan to establish their life for their families and for me. I'm a son of a farmer. You know how I got to be judged? It's by the grace of God. But the reality is what we need to do is treat these immigrants with dignity and respect, and I believe in providing a public-private partnership. It can't be the city or the county or the state or the federal just trying to, and we can't be just dumping people. We need to treat people with dignity and respect. And in regards to the center, I will go on record to support it.
Thank you. Commissioner DeBerry, you have 1 minute also. I realize this is something we could talk about all night long, but
Yeah,
1 minute
it is.
to
It's a
respond.
complicated issue for sure. So, look, folks, we have to get to a place where we have real leadership regarding comprehensive immigration reform. I mean, what does that look like? In the 90s, it looked like John McCain and Ted Kennedy coming together to really address comprehensive immigration reform and a circulatory process and a path to citizenship, and what does that look like? And so we have moved away from that. But my point here is there has to be a process. If we're going to open up all the borders and we have an administration that's not going to go down the border and see the crisis that has erupted there and what's going on there, that's not acceptable. Many of you who are here, and many of my friends, obviously, because I've lived in this community since for 57 years, when I work alongside people in kitchens, as I've done with small businesses and Time with Trish, I talk to immigrants who have come legally to this country, and they don't understand what's going on. So do we have to show dignity and respect? Because I've been down the Migrant Center, I've talked to people, many of those from Venezuela, who are oppressed, whose families have been victimized.
Thank you.
Like, that's unacceptable too.
Thank you.
But we have to have a process by which people get into this country legally.
Appreciate it. This is a very quick follow-up, but does that mean using county funds to support the city's effort? That means using county
Yes.
funds to support the city's
So I'll be
effort?
honest with you, I'd rather see federal funds that are used for that, because it's the federal government that's put it in the condition that it's in.
All right. Thank you. Let's move to the next question. 1 minute for this one as well. In recent months, the Alamo Regional Mobility Authority has continued to pursue the idea of allowing the Boring Company to build a tunnel from downtown to the airport, even though local leaders say they don't like that idea. If you become county judge, what do you see as the future of the Alamo RMA? Is that organization necessary, and do you think that the efforts that they're undertaking fit for the city and county? Let's go to Judge Sakai for 1 minute.
Yeah, the RMA is a necessary governmental entity. It's a county entity to make sure that we can draw the funds down. And that's what's key for the RMA, is to draw the funds down. Now, you have identified a particular project that has some controversy. And as county judge, I'll state my position. I do not support that tunnel project. I'm concerned about the effect on the aquifer. I believe that there are other alternatives for multimodal transportation. I want to focus with VIA to get so that we can figure out how to move people. Transportation and the congestion is a big issue. I've heard it out in the community and neighborhood association. And so the RMA, along with all the other governmental entities, city, county, state, federal, we're going to have to leverage those funds. What the big projects are is the IH-35 double-deck corridor. That is on the books, and we need to get that done. We need to finish out the 1604. So there are many projects that what we need to do is finish out. Maybe I will consider that perhaps we can look at a tunnel, but
Thank
not
you.
now.
Commissioner DeBerry, 1 minute on that
Okay,
one.
so which is it, Peter? You said you were opposed to it because you're concerned about the aquifer, but then you said you might consider it, which I'm not sure. You're speaking out of both sides of your mouth. So the Regional Mobility Authority is transformed and formed by the state. So there are many regional mobility authorities across the state of Texas. And so until legislation moves at a pace by which you're going to necessarily eradicate it, we're going to have to deal with it. And they're going to have to make tough decisions. As we look at growth associated with Bexar County, we are a very attractive county to be able to go into, and mobility is obviously hugely important. So yeah, my opponent talks about $7 billion worth of traffic projects that are on the ground in Bexar County, and by the way, we're doing a heck of a lot better than Austin regarding mobility because we have been forward-thinking about what we're doing. Not to mention $3.3 billion worth of projects that are on the ground in downtown San Antonio, but we can't do that and make sure that we're shuttering businesses. And we have businesses in downtown San Antonio, small businesses, who are dipping into their lifetime savings, much like Golden Star
Thank
Restaurant,
you.
because of the construction that's down there. So
Thank
yes,
you.
the answer is not no. The answer is we will investigate the opportunity.
Lee,
Appreciate it.
I believe.
Yeah, go ahead and do 1 minute in response. And we're getting close to the end, so
Right,
1 minute
I appreciate
quickly.
that.
Unless if you can.
You know, yesterday, Commissioner DeBerry, you attacked my integrity, my reputation, and are you doing that again today?
Commissioner DeBerry, you have a minute to respond.
Yeah, let me be pragmatic about this. We want to talk about being under attack. We have a dark money PAC that's taken $250,000 worth of negative attack ads out on me over the course of 10 days. And my 17-year-old daughter, who, by the way, I want to empower to hopefully maybe run for office one day, has to look at those hats. He's hiding behind those attacks. It's not enough to say, I don't know what's going on. But what you can do, Peter, as a judge who's been in office for 26 plus years and stood for not just children, but for women, what you can do, and what I want to challenge you today on, is condemn the ads. Condemn the content of the ads regarding a woman who, by the way, for 25 years has had a reputation of making a positive change in this community on several different issues. Whether it's been education, whether it's been transportation, whether it's been cyberbullying, what have you. But you haven't just condemned the ads and the content of them, you haven't even condemned dark money. So
Thank you.
your silence speaks volumes on this issue.
Thank you. Judge Sakai, you have 1 minute to respond.
I have stated earlier, and I'll state today, I have nothing to do whatsoever, me or my campaign, with those particular ads. I am going to stay. I gave a commitment not only in this election, the general election, but in the primary election. I have been personally attacked. My supporters have been personally attacked. I will not go to negative campaigns. And we will stay positive. And I want to thank the San Antonio Report, and I want to thank the audience for the respect we've been given when we talk about the issues. And that's what I will continue to do. Talk about the issues that are important to you. I didn't come here to rumble, so to speak. I came here to come up with solutions for our Bexar County voters.
Thank you. I had other questions I wanted to ask, but we're close on time, and so let's just do our closing statement. You have 1 minute to make a closing statement. Commissioner DeBerry, you get to go first on this one.
Yeah, I stand before you today, obviously as a small business owner, an entrepreneur for the past 25 years, somebody who has contributed to this economy over the course of those couple of decades. And so it's important because not only have I hired people and given them jobs, I understand the economy. And I'm going to go back to what I made originally. This is a super important position. You are the chief executive officer of this county, managing a $2.8 billion budget. And who is more qualified today? We have stark differences that we see here today. But most importantly, we have talked from the head, but I want to talk to you from the heart. And that is something that I've lived by, so I'm going to read this. This is Nelson Mandela, who I consider to be a remarkable human being. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And we ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people feel insecure around you. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in all of us. And as we let our own light shine, which I hope I have done on this stage today, we unconsciously give other people our permission to do the same.
Thank you.
As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. That is the kind of leadership I want to provide. Thank you.
Judge Sakai, you have 1 minute. You can go a little bit over if you'd like.
I'll stand to 1 minute. I want to thank the San Antonio Report. I want to thank y'all for the opportunity to come speak to you. We have spoken about the issues, and yeah, we kind of got into it, but the bottom line is we've had a great discussion. Thank you, Lee, for hosting and moderating this. The choice is clear for this county judge race. This is about proven leadership. This community has embraced me during my term as a judge. It trusts me. It has given me an opportunity to serve as a public servant, a servant leader. And for that, I will be eternally grateful. A son of a farmer who didn't really know where he was going to go to be at this level. This is what the American dream is all about. And so my commitment to you is to serve with you and continue that proven leadership. The late General Colin Powell said, leadership is about connecting people. And that is what I've been doing, and that's what I will do as your next county judge. Bring people together, discuss those issues, give dignity and respect to all those that have come before you, including everybody in this crowd, even those that do not support me. And I respect that. I really do. And I want to then to serve, and I will be your servant leader to protect the children and families of our community, which is the most important infrastructure in our county. Thank you for this opportunity. God bless.
Thank you. Give it up for both of our candidates. Thank you so much for being here today. I think we can all agree that a race like this makes us all better. It's important to have these conversations. So we appreciate you being here today, and you can head off stage whenever you are ready.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, everyone, for being here. I'm going to have Jenna Mallett from our team, our Chief Financial Officer, come on out and say goodbye. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jenna Price Mallett. I'm the Chief Operating Officer with the San Antonio Report. First, I want to thank Lee Munsell, our Editor-in-Chief and moderator this evening, as well as our candidates. Thank you. I want to take this opportunity to thank our 5th annual City Fest sponsors, the City of San Antonio and Bexar County Community and Economic Development. Without their support, City Fest would not be possible. I would also like to thank our engagement, innovation, and city builder sponsors. It is due to our sponsors that we have so many free programs this year, and we are so appreciative to them. Tomorrow is our 4th and final day of City Fest this year. I want to invite you all to join us for our virtual program at noon on our Emerging Change Makers. You can tune in on Facebook Live or via YouTube. And at 6 p.m., we will be at Legacy Park for our Live Like a Local launch block party. Both events are free, so we would love you all to join us. We hope to see you there. And and finally, the San Antonio Report is a local nonprofit news organization. If you appreciate local reporting and civic engagement events like this, we invite you to become a member. It is because of our members that we're able to continue the work that we're doing. So please, if you'd like to become a member, you can stop at the membership table on your way out, or on the back of the program booklet, there's a QR code that you can also donate online on our website. Thank you all so much for being here this evening. We really appreciate it. Have a great evening.